Now, if you've lived long enough in these West Virginia hills, you've heard the talk. Not about ghosts exactly, not about monsters neither, but about folks who knew things. The kind of people that could look at a feverish child and say, "That ain't sickness. That's the wind setting wrong inside 'em." The kind that could stop bleeding with a whispered verse, or settle a restless spirit with a handful of dried leaves. People called 'em healers. Some called 'em granny women. Some called 'em root workers. And some folks wouldn't say their name at all. Because in these mountains, you don't always know if somebody's gift is a blessing or something the holler itself handed down. Tonight, we're talking about the healers of the Appalachian Mountains of West Virginia. And I'll tell you right now, this story ain't meant to scare you, but it might make you look twice next time you pass a cabin light burning deep in the woods. Long before doctors were easy to reach, folks had to make do. A long trip to town could take half a day, and if the river was high, it might take longer. So people turned to the ones who knew the woods. There were women who could walk a ridgeline and find medicine where others just saw weeds. They knew which bark would bring down a fever, which root would ease a cough, and which plant you didn't touch unless you had a good reason. They'd dry bundles of herbs and hang 'em from rafters. Their kitchens smelled like smoke, mint, dirt, and secrets. And people swore these healers didn't just treat the body, they treated the whole trouble. Because sometimes a person didn't get sick from cold weather. Sometimes they got sick from grief, or from fear, or from carrying too much weight in their spirit. And those old healers, they understood that. They'd sit you down at the table, pour you something bitter, and ask you questions that didn't sound like medicine at all. Like, who you been dreaming about lately? Who you been mad at? What did you carry home that ain't yours? And when they said those things, folks would swallow hard, because sometimes they was right. Now this is where it gets strange. In West Virginia folklore, there's an old belief called charming. That's when a healer speaks words, sometimes a prayer, sometimes a Bible verse, to stop something like bleeding, burns, or warts. People called it stopping blood. And the wild part is, there's folks alive right now who still believe in it. They'll tell you about an uncle who cut his hand clean open, blood everywhere, and somebody, some quiet old man who never talked much, came over, put his hand above the wound, and whispered something nobody could hear, and the bleeding slowed. Now, was it faith? Was it calm? Was it the body responding to stillness? Maybe. But in the mountains, people don't always need an explanation. Sometimes all they need is proof. And in these hollers, stories like that don't die, because the mountain remembers, and the people remember too. Some healers wouldn't teach their charm to just anybody. They said you had to pass it down the right way. And most of the time, they'd only teach it to one person, usually the youngest, usually the quietest, the one who listened more than they spoke. And when the healer got old, they'd call that person in close and speak the words into their ear, not loud, not proud, almost like they was afraid the mountains might overhear. But healers weren't just medicine people. They were watchers. They noticed things regular folks ignored, like when the birds went silent too early, or when the dogs refused to cross a certain patch of ground. They believed sickness could come from bad air, from a curse, or from something unseen hitching a ride on you. They didn't call it spooky. They called it unsettled. And they had rules for dealing with it. Some of them rules sound simple, but the way people followed them tells you how deep the fear ran. Like, don't whistle at night. Don't bring a mirror into a sick room. Don't sleep with your feet toward the door. Don't speak a person's full name if they're near death. And one of the strangest ones, if you felt like something was following you home, you'd turn your coat inside out and walk backward a few steps. Not because it made sense, but because if the world is twisted, you twist yourself right back out of it. That's mountain logic, and it's older than any paved road. There's an old story from deep in West Virginia. Could be Raleigh County, could be Fayette, could be up toward Nicholas. Nobody ever agrees on where it happened, which usually means it happened everywhere. A man was sick, not coughing sick, not fever sick, but the kind of sick where the eyes look wrong and the voice don't sound like itself. His wife walked miles through the cold to find a healer. She found a cabin tucked back in the timber. No road, no smoke, just one lantern lit inside. She knocked, and an old woman answered. Didn't smile, didn't ask questions, just looked at her like she already knew why she'd come. The wife begged. The old woman nodded once and said, "Tell him I'll be there at sundown, and don't let nobody else speak in that room till I arrive." The wife ran home, and she did exactly what she was told. Sundown came, and the healer arrived, carrying a bundle of herbs and a small jar of something dark. She walked into the room, sat beside the man, and said, "Now listen here, you don't belong in this body." Then she opened the jar. Nobody knows what was in it. Some say honey, some say molasses, some say river mud, but she rubbed it on his forehead, and she whispered words so low even the wife couldn't hear. And after a while, the man stopped shivering. His eyes settled, his breathing slowed, and he went to sleep like a baby. The next morning, he woke up hungry. Now, was it medicine? Was it comfort? Or was it something stranger? All I know is this. The wife went back to thank the healer, and the cabin wasn't there. No lantern, no footprints, just an empty patch of leaves, like nobody had ever lived there at all. Now you can believe these stories or not. Some folks say it's superstition. Some say it's just old-time medicine. But in the West Virginia mountains, there's always been people who walk a line between the natural world and the unseen one. And whether it was herbs, prayer, charm words, or just wisdom, those healers kept folks alive when nobody else could. So next time you're out driving a back road and you see a single cabin light burning deep in the trees, don't be too quick to get scared. Could be somebody telling ghost stories. Could be somebody making supper. Or could be somebody in there doing what they've always done in these mountains, keeping the old knowledge alive, quietly, carefully, like the hills ask them to. And if you listen real close, you might just hear the creek whispering the same thing it always has. Not everything is meant to be explained.